Hi, I'm Paul Beckwith. I'm with the University of Ottawa Laboratory for Paleoclimatology. The university is just over there, so there's buildings over there. And this is another rant video. I have a lot of other stuff going on, so I haven't had too much time to put together these videos this week with my computer and slides and stuff like that. It does take time to do that stuff. But anyway, a couple things. Again, I want to re-emphasize that grand solar minimum, forget it, guys. You know, like it's just, what are you trying to argue that the grand solar minimum is doing? Create extreme weather events today, right now? Absolutely not. No evidence for that. Okay, the solar changes from sunspots are much longer cycle. If we do, I'm not saying we won't go into a grand solar minimum, it's possible. The projections for the next few cycles of sunspots is fairly low. But people have done modeling on the Maunder minimum, for example. And yeah, when the sunspot activity is low over a large number of cycles, I think the Maunder minimum was what, 70 years or something, which is about 6 or 7 solar cycles. You know, very few sunspots. Sun was putting out about 0.1% less energy, and you know, as a result, over a period of time that accumulated, you know, we were in a cold period in Europe. People were skating on the canals and things, the Thames River. Okay, so yeah, I mean, this thing, we can't, you know, we don't have a perfect knowledge of how the sun is going to behave, you know, through the next number of cycles. There's projections that the next few cycles will be on the low side, but this is going to play out over a long period of time. Meanwhile, we're undergoing abrupt climate change because we've changed the chemistry of the atmosphere and oceans. Greenhouse gases, over 400 parts per million, almost 410. Okay, we know the CO2 molecule, what it does, how it traps heat. So, sorry GSM people, you got to try harder. You know, and I won't even get into the chemtrailers and the harpers and stuff, you know, but there has to be more pushback from the scientific community on these people, because, you know, there's a lot of misleading ideas out there. Anyway, I had an interesting call today from guy Eric at the Fulcrum, which is a local newspaper. He'd asked me he phoned, I guess, yesterday and left a message and said, I'm looking for somebody, an expert on micro farming. And I'm thinking, well, what do I know about micro farming? Anyway, I called him back, and it turns out he's writing an article about, what did he call it? Cricket farms. Okay, so the idea of micro farming is, you know, small things farming. You can do it indoors, you can do it in urban environments. You know, it's people can raise their own food cheaply, very nutritious food. So I said, well, what do? Do you, you know, harvest a whole bunch of crickets, and I don't know, what do? Gas them and then sprinkle chocolate over them and then munch them? I don't think that'll go over too well in the Western world. You know, there's a history going back a long time, people eating bugs for nutrition, mostly in Africa and things like that. We hear of those things. We know of that history. He says, no, it's becoming a big thing. There's actually a startup company in Montreal, a lot of websites on it, just micro farming or even cricket farming. He says the life cycle is about a month, so you start off with very tiny crickets. They're very big crickets in a month, and then they're killed. I don't know if they're gassed or what. You know, probably just cut the oxygen in the Tupperware container they're in or something, so they all keel over. Then you dry them out, and then you grind them up. He says people that do it on their own at home sometimes use a pepper grinder to grind them up. That's large scale. But anyway, there's some companies that are producing this stuff. What you end up is a powder, like cricket flour. So it's marketed as cricket flour, and apparently it's in some grocery stores now. the Canadian stores, Loblaws, is apparently going to stock this thing in all their stores soon. It's in trial stores now. Athletes love it. It's highly nutritious, lots of protein. You know, it's a whole cricket. You use the whole cricket. So anyway, I see potential. You know, cricket flour, would you buy it? I said maybe they should market it. Just call it eco flour or something. You know, sell a whole bunch of it and don't tell people that crickets are in. But I guess that's a bit too Soylent Green. You know, that's too much like Soylent Green. Although that was people rather than crickets. But anyway, you get the gist. So we started talking about, you know, why do we need to do this? What are the reasons that companies are doing this? And I said, you know, why stop at flour? You know, I can see a big market in something like, what about taking the flour and fermenting it? And then we have cricket beer and we have cricket wine, specialty cricket wines. There you go. I think that would really catch on. Anybody that's had a few beers or a few glasses of wine is probably more likely to try the cricket beer or cricket wine, right? And it could really catch on. Apparently it tastes fairly good, the cricket flour. You know, you can bake cookies, banana breads, whatever you want, just like regular flour. I think it has to be, you have to change a few things in the way you cook it, but you know, it's becoming a big thing. Maybe it's just a Canada thing. Anyway, think of a startup company. If you're looking for something to do, environmentally friendly, you know, start producing cricket flour. So anyway, I started talking to him about, you know, the elevator pitch on climate change, right? We've changed the chemistry of the atmosphere. This is for, I apologize to my regular listeners because they can probably recite this exactly as I do, but this is more for the denier crowd, the GSM crowd, the people that are going to lace this video with negative comments. By the way, I'm going to start to collect all these negative comments, and when I get about a couple hundred pages, I'll just publish a book. You know, comments from the internet world, you know, that are you know, either just slanderous or ad hominem or totally bizarre. I think it would make a good book. It would be a good case study, you know, at a school or something. But anyway, so there's so here's the spiel anyway. Okay, so our emissions have changed the chemistry of the atmosphere. You know, most people are aware, you know, solar energy comes through, hits the ground, heats up the ground. That heat is infrared or long wave radiation, goes up, is captured by the CO2 and methane and things like that, and the atmosphere heats up. This heating melts the ice and snow up in the Arctic, so the sea ice drops exponentially, snow cover drops exponentially, the Arctic gets a lot darker, heats up because the darker ground absorbs the solar energy. So the Arctic's warming much faster than the rest of the planet. So this is a problem because the temperature difference between the Arctic and the equator decreases, the jet streams slow down and become wavier, and we get all these torrential extreme weather events because of the broken and fractured jet streams. Okay, and this will hit our food supply, global food supplies. You know, Arctic's likely to be open water completely by the end of the summer, by say in the next 5 years. So what this is going to do is our food supply is going to be threatened. These extreme weather events, increasing in frequency, severity, and duration, will hack into the global food supply. There'll be shortages, riots in the streets, countries collapsing, all this nasty stuff. So any way we can democratize the food process, right? Get food being more produced by people as opposed to just large corporations, can only be a good thing. So cricket farming, micro farming, cricket farming, keep your eyes peeled, this is possible. At that point I brought up the idea of domestication of whale sharks in the ocean. Okay, and I've talked about this. I think this would be a great opportunity to reduce the acidity in the ocean, to make the ocean much more prolific, bring it back, restore the ocean, the variety of marine life to the ocean. So the idea of this is to have an ocean pump. So you have a cylinder a couple hundred meters long, suspended a few meters below the ocean surface on a buoy. At the very bottom of this open tube is a one-way valve. Waves lift the buoy up and down, which lifts the tube up and down. When the tube rises up, there's a one-way valve at the bottom that shuts. So it brings up a plug of cold water, which is laced with nutrients, up the tube. In the trough of the wave, the whole thing drops down. The one-way valve opens, it refills with the cold air and cold water and nutrients, and the cycle repeats. So wave action is converted, that energy is converted into pumping, bringing the water up to the surface. That nutrient-laden water gets to the surface. It's the limiting factor. It's why that the ocean there has no nutrient, no phytoplankton, no life, basically. Think of water in the Caribbean. That blue color is because there's no phytoplankton in it. Most of the ocean is like that, a barren desert, except for coastlines where there's upwelling of nutrients. Okay, so this is in the middle of the ocean. We have our wave pumps, bring up the nutrients, get phytoplankton blooms, then get zooplankton blooms, then get fish eating them. Now, whale sharks are whales. They're gill feeders. They have gills. They move through the water moves through their gills. Phytoplankton and zooplankton, all those little critters are eaten by the whale. We get a huge whale, right, as a result. So what we would do is, in this part of the ocean, deep ocean, so it's at the surface, the phytoplankton blooms are generated, the whale sharks go and munch on the phytoplankton and zooplankton, and they're in pens, they're in enclosed areas, very large enclosed areas, and they're extracting huge amounts of carbon from the atmosphere. This is carbon dioxide removal, makes the ocean less acidic, draws down vast amounts of CO2 in areas where no CO2 is removed from the atmosphere by this biological pump, if you like. Okay, so there's huge opportunity for pulling. These all fit under the CDR, carbon dioxide removal ideas, and there's lots of these ideas that are floating around soon. But we have, so that has to be done. We got to slash fossil fuel emissions, leg 1 of the bar stool. Got to remove CO2 from the atmosphere. That's leg 2. Leg 3 is the solar radiation management ideas. And there's loads of ideas. I've talked about a number of them. The quickest and dirtiest is, and it will work, we know, is sulfur in the stratosphere. But there's loads of other ideas. For example, talk to your city councilors and just get all the roofs painted white in your city. Get all the roads, get them to mix stuff in with the asphalt so it's black. So instead of black roads, we have white roads. All that reflectivity will reflect a lot more of the sunlight, less absorption. It'll go a long way to getting rid of the heat island effect in your city. There's all kinds of things, and I've talked about them in other videos. Don't forget to check out my website, http://paulbeckwith.net. Just Google paulbeckwith.net, and there's always blogs. After I do a couple of videos, there's a blog and some additional information and stuff. So this week I did an interview, last week rather, an EcoShock radio interview talking about waves that are moving huge boulders. I also had an interview on a radio station talking about, a better future. How can we imagine a better future in 2015? How could we possibly get there? So it's an hour-long chat on a talk radio station. And of course I did my rant video yesterday and then this one. So lots and lots of stuff to see. So please, thank you for paying attention. We got to get this message out to more people. So we got to talk to Cambridge Analytica and figure out how they can put